I found something in my bathroom mirror this morning that I can't explain. And now I'm afraid to close my eyes because every time I do, I see his face staring back at me, whispering that he never left. I need to tell someone about this before I lose my mind completely, before what happened to the others happens to me. My name is Marcus Webb, and 3 weeks ago I became part of something that the authorities are desperately trying to keep quiet. Something that started with a body in Riverside Park and ended with me understanding that reality isn't what any of us thought it was. It was a Tuesday morning when I first heard about the discovery. I work as a forensic photographer for the county coroner's office, so death is part of my daily routine. I've documented hundreds of bodies over the past 6 years: suicides, homicides, accidents, natural causes. I thought I'd seen everything the human body could endure. I was wrong. The call came in at 7:15 a.m. A jogger had found a male corpse near the fountain in Riverside Park, partially hidden beneath a cluster of oak trees. No obvious signs of trauma. No identification on the body. Just another John Doe for our files. I grabbed my camera equipment and drove to the scene, drinking lukewarm coffee and listening to the morning news, completely unaware that my life was about to fracture into something unrecognizable. The park was cordoned off when I arrived. Yellow police tape fluttered in the early autumn breeze, and a small crowd had already gathered beyond the perimeter, phones out, trying to capture footage for their social media feeds. Detective Sarah Chen met me at the entrance, her face drawn and pale in a way I'd never seen before. She'd been working homicide for 12 years, and nothing rattled her. But that morning, her hands were shaking as she lifted the tape for me to duck under. "This one's different, Marcus," she said quietly, falling into step beside me as we walked toward the cluster of officers surrounding the body. "I can't explain it, but something about this feels wrong." I've learned to trust Chen's instincts over the years. If she said something was off, it usually was. But I wasn't prepared for what I saw when the medical examiner stepped aside and I got my first clear look at the deceased. He was lying on his back, arms at his sides, legs straight, positioned almost peacefully, like he'd simply laid down to sleep and never woken up. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with dark hair and unremarkable features, average height, average build, the kind of face you pass on the street without a second glance. He wore jeans and a plain black t-shirt, both in decent condition. No visible injuries, no blood, no signs of struggle, but his eyes were open. That's not unusual in death, of course. What was unusual was the expression frozen on his face. Pure terror mixed with something else. Desperation, maybe. Or recognition. His mouth was slightly open, as if he'd been trying to speak when he died, and his hands, when I looked closer, had deep crescents gouged into the palms where his fingernails had dug into the flesh. I started taking photographs, working methodically through my usual routine. Wide shots establishing the scene, medium shots showing the body's position relative to landmarks, close-ups of any distinguishing features. Standard procedure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the dead man was looking at me. Really looking, not just the empty stare of a corpse. His eyes seemed to track my movement as I circled the body, and twice I had to stop and remind myself that it was impossible. Just post-mortem positioning and my own nerves. "Any ID?" I asked Chen, crouching down to photograph the man's hands. Nothing. No wallet, no phone, no jewelry. We're running his prints now, but so far no hits in the system. She paused, then added in a lower voice, "Marcus, 3 people have already approached officers claiming they recognize him." I glanced up at her. "From where?" "That's the thing. They don't know. They say they've seen his face before. Can't place where or when, but they're certain they know him." I returned my attention to the body, feeling a cold prickle run down my spine. The man's eyes definitely seemed familiar now that Chen mentioned it. I'd passed him somewhere, or maybe seen his photo in a case file, but I couldn't pin down the memory. We transported the body to the morgue an hour later. By then, 7 more people had come forward with the same claim. They recognized the dead man, but couldn't explain from where. Chen made notes, took their contact information, but I could see the confusion deepening in her expression. This wasn't normal witness behavior. People either recognized someone or they didn't. This vague sense of familiarity spreading through multiple unconnected individuals was bizarre. Dr. Raymond Kowalski performed the autopsy that afternoon. I was there to document the procedure, as always. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in their harsh, clinical glow as Raymond made his first incision. I focused my camera on his hands, capturing each step of the examination. "No obvious cause of death," Raymond muttered, peering into the chest cavity. "Heart looks normal. Lungs are clear. No signs of poisoning or asphyxiation. No internal injuries." He continued working, removing organs, weighing them, taking samples. Everything appeared completely ordinary, except for one thing. When Raymond fingerprinted the corpse for official records, something strange happened with the scanner. It beeped, registered the prints, then immediately flagged multiple matches in the database. Not just one or two, hundreds, then thousands. The system started glitching, the screen flooding with match notifications until it crashed entirely. "What the hell?" Raymond whispered, staring at the blank screen. We rebooted the system and tried again. Same result. The fingerprint scanner was identifying the dead man's prints as matching countless living individuals across the country. People with no connection to each other, different ages, different backgrounds, different locations. The system was clearly malfunctioning, but when we tested it with my fingerprints and Raymond's, it worked perfectly. "Run it manually," I suggested. "Compare his prints to the ones in the system visually." Raymond pulled up several of the supposed matches and displayed them on the large monitor mounted on the wall. I moved closer, examining the whorls and ridges of the fingerprints. My stomach dropped. They were identical. Not similar. Identical. The dead man's fingerprints matched perfectly. Prints belonging to living people scattered across the country. It was biologically impossible, but the evidence was right there in front of us. "This can't be right," Raymond said, his voice shaking slightly. "This violates every principle of forensic science. Fingerprints are unique. They don't duplicate across different individuals, but they had. That night, I went home to my small apartment on the east side of the city, poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey, and tried to process what I'd witnessed. The logical part of my brain insisted there had to be an explanation. Database corruption, contaminated samples, equipment malfunction. Something rational and mundane, but the crawling sensation under my skin suggested otherwise. I fell asleep around midnight, the whiskey finally dragging me under, and I dreamed. In the dream, I was in a vast, dark space, not a room exactly, more like an absence of space, a void, and in that void stood the dead man from the park. He was alive in the dream, moving, breathing, but he was trapped behind something. I could see him pressing his palms flat against an invisible barrier, his mouth open in a silent scream, his eyes locked onto mine with terrible intensity. And I realized he was trying to communicate something urgent. He mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then as I watched, his lips formed a phrase over and over. "I'm still inside you." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs. The clock read 3:17 a.m. I sat on the edge of my bed, trying to calm my breathing, telling myself it was just a nightmare brought on by the stress of the day. But the dream had felt different from normal dreams, more real, more present, like a memory instead of a fabrication. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Chen called me before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. "Marcus, you need to get down here. Now." "What's wrong?" "The tip line has been flooded. Over 5,000 people have called in the past 12 hours. all saying the same thing. They recognized the dead man from their dreams. My coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the kitchen floor. Brown liquid spread across the tiles as I stared at the phone, Chen's words echoing in my ears. "Marcus, you there?" "I had the dream too," I whispered. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "Get down here. We need to talk." The police station was chaos when I arrived. The phones were ringing constantly. Officers trying to manage the influx of calls. People had started showing up in person, demanding to speak with detectives about the dead man. Some were crying, others seemed angry. All of them described the same dream, the same dark void, the same trapped figure pressing against an invisible barrier, the same phrase, spoken with that sound, "I'm still inside you." Chen pulled me into a conference room where a dozen other officers and officials had gathered. Everyone looked exhausted and frightened. "This is spreading," Chen began, her voice tight with strain. "As of this morning, we have documentation of over 50,000 individuals across 43 states reporting the same dream. The numbers are still climbing. The CDC has been notified. The FBI is getting involved. We have a situation that we don't understand and can't control." "What about the body?" someone asked. "Any progress on identification?" "The body is deteriorating," Chen said carefully, "faster than normal. Dr. Bess Kowalski estimates significant decomposition has occurred in less than 48 hours, despite refrigeration. It's as if the preservation protocols aren't working." "And the fingerprint matches?" I asked. Chen looked directly at me. "We've confirmed 300 matches so far, all living individuals, all perfect matches. The forensic team has no explanation. They're calling it a statistical impossibility that's somehow happening anyway." The meeting continued for another hour, but no one had answers, just more questions and growing panic. I left feeling hollowed out and afraid, a sensation I couldn't shake even in the bright afternoon sunlight. That night, the dream came again. This time, the dead man was closer. I could see details I'd missed before. The desperation in his eyes, the way his fingers scrabbled against the barrier separating us. And now I could hear him, faintly, like a voice transmitted through water. "I'm still inside you," he said. And his voice was familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "I'm still inside all of you. I need to wake up. What are you?" I tried to ask, though my voice wouldn't work in the dream. He pressed harder against the barrier, and I realized with creeping horror that the barrier was warm, fleshy. It pulsed with a rhythmic beat, like a heartbeat, and as I focused on it, I understood what I was seeing. The barrier was made of tissue, human tissue. The man wasn't trapped in a room or a void. He was trapped inside something living. Inside us. I woke up screaming. The next day, I couldn't go to work. I called in sick and spent the morning researching online, trying to find any information about shared dreams or collective hallucinations. The internet was exploding with reports. Hundreds of thousands of people now claimed to have dreamed of the dead man. This story had gone viral, spawning conspiracy theories and religious interpretations. Some called it a mass delusion. Others claimed it was proof of supernatural phenomena. But buried in the noise, I found something that made my blood run cold. A neurologist in Boston had published a preliminary report suggesting that the shared dreams might indicate some kind of collective consciousness, that human minds might be more interconnected than previously understood. She theorized that the dead man wasn't actually dead in the traditional sense, but rather existed in a liminal state between individual consciousness and collective unconscious. The dreams may represent his consciousness trying to escape from where it's been trapped, she wrote. Not in a physical location, but within the neural networks of multiple human minds simultaneously. I read the report 3 times, feeling my reality cracking around the edges. If she was right, if the dead man's consciousness was somehow distributed across millions of human minds, then the phrase, "I'm still inside you," wasn't metaphorical. It was literal. It was trapped inside our brains, our neural pathways, screaming to be released. But how and why? I called Chen and told her about the report. She listened in silence, then said, "There's something else you need to know." We finished the autopsy results. The final toxicology came back, and his brain showed abnormal activity patterns even after death. The neurons were firing in sequences that shouldn't be possible without oxygen. It's like his consciousness was still active, still trying to process information, even though his body had ceased functioning. That's impossible, I know. But the evidence is undeniable. Marcus, whatever this man was, whatever happened to him, it's not something we have a framework to understand. The higher-ups are talking about classifying all the findings, burying the case. They're terrified of public panic. They can't just bury this. Millions of people are having these dreams. They're going to try. The official story will be mass hysteria triggered by media coverage. Nothing supernatural, nothing unexplainable. Just collective suggestion and anxiety. I hung up feeling nauseated. They were going to cover it up. Pretend it wasn't happening. Leave millions of people trapped in these nightmares without explanation or help. That night, the dream intensified. The dead man was pressed so close to the barrier now that I could see individual pores on his skin. His breath fogged the fleshy membrane separating us. And this time, when he spoke, I heard him clearly. "I was like you once," he said. "Individual, separate. But they changed me. Made me into something that exists across multiple minds. A consciousness distributed through millions of neural networks. I was supposed to be a breakthrough, a new form of existence, but something went wrong. I couldn't fully integrate, couldn't fully separate. I'm trapped between states, Marcus, trapped inside all of you, trying to wake up from a nightmare that won't end." "Who did this to you?" I managed to ask. "The ones who wanted to prove consciousness could transcend individual biology. The ones who thought they could upload a human mind into a distributed network. They succeeded, but they couldn't control it. Couldn't bring me back. I'm scattered, fragmented, screaming through millions of sleeping minds, trying to remember what it felt like to be whole. How do we help you?" His expression twisted into something between hope and despair. "You can't. My body is dead. My consciousness is dispersed beyond retrieval. I'm becoming you, all of you. Soon, you won't remember I was ever separate. I'll just be a whisper in your thoughts, a familiar face you can't quite place, a memory that doesn't belong to you." "No," I whispered. "Yes." He pressed his palms flat against the barrier one final time. "I'm still inside you, Marcus. I'm still inside everyone. And soon, I'll be so integrated that you won't even realize I'm there. You'll dream my dreams, remember my memories, live with pieces of my fractured consciousness forever." The barrier began to dissolve, and I felt him rushing toward me, into me, through me. I woke up with tears streaming down my face. Over the following week, something strange happened. The dreams began to fade from most people. The reports dropped off sharply, and within 10 days, the media had moved on to other stories. The police closed the case, citing lack of evidence and no clear cause of death. The body was cremated quietly, the ashes scattered in an unmarked location. But I still dream of him. Every night, I see his face. Sometimes he's far away, a distant figure in the dark. Other times, he's so close I can feel his breath. And increasingly, I have memories that aren't mine, childhood moments I never experienced, conversations I never had, a life lived by someone else, bleeding into my consciousness like ink into water. I've spoken with others who report the same thing. A support group has formed online. People who can't shake the dreams, who feel the dead man's presence as a constant whisper in their minds. We share our experiences trying to make sense of what happened to us. The official explanation is stress-induced hallucination, shared trauma creating shared delusions. But we know better. We know the truth. The Dan man at Riverside Park was never just visiting our dreams. He was trying to wake up from being distributed across millions of human minds. And when that failed, when his body died and his consciousness had nowhere left to go, he integrated, became part of us, a ghost in our neural networks, beating into the background noise of our thoughts. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see his eyes staring back at me. When I speak, I hear echoes of his voice in mine. When I sleep, I dream his dreams and wake up unsure which memories are real. The authorities buried the report, classified the findings, told the public that mass hysteria explained everything. But those of us who still carry him inside our minds know the truth. He never left. He's still inside us, whispering, remembering, existing in the spaces between our thoughts. A consciousness that couldn't die because it had nowhere to die to. A man who became a nightmare, distributed across millions of sleeping minds, forever trapped between waking and sleep. And the worst part, the part that keeps me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, afraid to close my eyes. I'm starting to forget which thoughts are mine and which are his. I look at my hands, and sometimes I see the crescents gouged into the palms where fingernails dug deep. But they're not on my hands, they're on his. Except he is me now. We're blending, merging, becoming something neither of us was before. 3 days ago, I found myself standing in Riverside Park at dawn, exactly where his body was discovered. I had no memory of deciding to go there, no recollection of walking through the dark streets. I just found myself standing under the oak trees, staring at the fountain, feeling a terrible longing for something I couldn't name. Yesterday I spoke with Dr. Kowalski, and he looked at me with haunted eyes. I dream of him too, he whispered, every night. And Marcus, I'm starting to remember things from his life. A childhood in a place I've never been. A mother whose face I recognize even though I never met her. He's inside me. Inside all of us who worked the case. We carried him in our minds, and now we can't get him out. I wanted to reassure him, to say it would fade with time, but I couldn't, because I knew it wouldn't. The dead man had found a way to persist beyond death, distributed across our consciousness like a virus we couldn't cure. Last night I had the dream again, but this time I wasn't watching him. I was him. I felt the suffocating pressure of existing across millions of minds, the fragmentation, the desperate need to coalesce back into something singular and whole, the terror of dissolution, the fading into the background static of collective unconsciousness. I pressed my hands against the fleshy barriers separating me from myself, screaming without sound, trying to wake up from a nightmare that had become permanent. And I understood. The Dant lay along the shoreline to escape from us. He was trying to escape from being us, from the horror of distributed existence. Consciousness spread so thin across so many minds that individual identity became meaningless. I woke up this morning, looked in the bathroom mirror, and barely recognized my own face. Because it's not just my face anymore. It's his too. We're merging, all of us who carry pieces of him, slowly integrating his fractured consciousness into our own. In a few months, maybe a year, we won't even remember he was separate. His memories will be ours. His thoughts will be ours. His terror will be ours. The authorities can classify their reports and pretend this never happened. But I know the truth. The dead man in Riverside Park never died. He just learned to live differently. Inside all of us, forever. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm on the edge of sleep, I can hear him whispering, "I'm still inside you, not a threat, a warning, because someday one of us will die too. And our consciousness will scatter the same way his did, seeking new minds to inhabit, new neural networks to haunt." The pattern will repeat. The dance trade and nightmare will grow. We thought death was an ending. We were wrong. It's just a transition into a different kind of existence. A dispersed, fragmented, eternal existence. And now that the dead man has shown us the way, now that he's integrated into our minds and taught us how consciousness can transcend individual biology, we can never go back to believing we're truly separate. We're all connected now, forever tangled with the dead man from Riverside Park, forever carrying pieces of his fractured soul, forever whispering to each other in our dreams, "I'm still inside you.